Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today is June 27th, 2024. In this episode, I'd like to talk about the newly released direction of Japan's export control policy as released by the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, METI. A new interim report on the direction of Japan's export control policy was just released, and I want to tell you about it. Here is the anticipated impact it will have. First, let's dive into the background of this report and explain why Japan's Ministry of Industry is shifting its export control policy in the first place. What is going on in the background? First, the emergence of military-civil fusion. As we have discussed before on the Sunday morning briefings, clearly there is a movement that is purposefully blurring the lines between military and civilian sectors. Some countries are intentionally erasing these boundaries, leading to a very distinct trend of integration between the two sectors. But this is Japan, so this blurring is something of great significance. Second, dual-use technology, which includes technologies that can be used for both civilian and military purposes, is undergoing reclassification. Unlike military technologies like artillery and tank shells that serve no other purpose other than military use, dual-use technologies are those things such as semiconductors that can serve both purposes. Similarly, dual-use technologies that are important for security are not necessarily limited to sensitive technologies regulated by international export control regimes, as the potential for military use of a broader range of general-purpose items and technologies like helicopters or drones or AI have also been increasing in recent years. Therefore, this important prevalence of dual-use technology is becoming more important, and we find that civilian-use technologies are being used more in the latest development of defense assets. Third, many countries, including Japan, base their export control policies on what is known as the Wassenaar Arrangement. Most countries in G20 have translated and implemented their export control laws to comply with this international standard, but the rapidly changing geopolitical landscape has pushed the international system's ability to adopt quickly enough. My fourth point is the influence of the United States' unique export control method known as the Entity List. This is gaining impact in Japan's export control policy. America's Entity List is a distinct system not currently present in Japan, but pushed by the United States. The new direction of METI is from the recent Camp David discussions, and clearly the direction of Japan's export control policy is undergoing vast change. So I'm sure many of you wonder who's going to feel the impact of this new policy the most. Well, the export control system of Japan will definitely affect exporters from Japan who import or develop goods in Japan and then export those goods or technologies overseas. This is actually what Japan Inc. excels at. Recent tensions between the United States and China have driven export bases to shift back to Japan from countries like China, Vietnam, and elsewhere. In fact, there's been an increase in non-Japanese companies establishing manufacturing bases here in Japan. So beyond the competition for qualified labor, you can imagine that changes to Japan's export control system will increasingly affect more companies and businesses who have set up their base of operations here. On the flip side, companies in Japan that procure goods or technologies from overseas are also likely to be affected. You might recall METI halting semiconductor-related material exports to South Korea recently. This caused huge issues and devastated South Korea's semiconductor industry. Though some of this has already been fixed, this is just one example that really illustrates how changes to Japan's export control system can affect any company doing business with Japan and not just the domestic ones. From a macro perspective, this is a restructuring of the global supply chain guided by and defined in the changes of export policy. Of course, various companies are already working with managing and adapting to these changes. As time goes by, it is important to know about Japan's export control capabilities, particularly for those responsible for designing supply chain.